Let me tell you of the days of high adventure.
Hey the nation, welcome to the show where we show you how to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander Cheapskate, and it's another edition of Age of the Realms, our Age of Sigmar Battle Reports. This one is Battle Report number 11. It is I, Commander Cheapskate, my Wild Hunt Sylvaneth Forest Spirit War Group Battalion versus Lady Domina of the Legion of the Hag Gref, which is an exiled Warhost Battalion. And this one's kind of nice because we start using some of the new stuff that's coming along the way that Games Workshop is releasing for Age of Sigmar. We start using some of the new Sylvaneth models in my army. Specifically, we also use some of the newer things that are coming out of the General's Handbook, things like multiple command abilities, multiple abilities that way as well, bonuses to give into different models, and more customization for your army, and it's actually kind of cool. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and move on to our army lists. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about my Wild Hunt. It is a Sylvaneth Forest Spirit War Group Battalion. First of all, my general is once again the man, the myth, the legend. It is Durthu. Also, I have Coadil. He is my Tree Man Ancient, and that's right, he has the additional command ability of Tree Singing as well. So because of that, you can give new command abilities to different miniatures in your army with the new rules coming out. So we decided to do that with Coadil. After that, we have Sternbark the Tree Man, followed by Briarmaven the Branch Wraith, Siobhan of the Shadows, who's my second Branch Wraith, and Crimson Moss, who's my third Branch Wraith. And the reason why I have a new Branch Wraith is because Dryka is back in the new Sylvaneth army, so I gotta come up with a new name for one of my Branch Wraiths. After that, we have the Troop of Dawn. This is a new unit that's addition to my army. It is 6 Kurnoth Hunters with a Huntmaster, Kurnoth Great Bows, and Quiverling's Vicious Claws. So that's a new addition to my army. Another addition to my army is the Troop of Dusk, which is 6 Kurnoth Hunters with Huntmaster as well as Kurnoth Great Swords attached to them as well, so that part's pretty cool. After that, we have the Court of Tides, which is my unit of 20 Dryads, the Branch Nymph, the Court of Summers, which is 15 Dryads, the Branch Nymph, and finally the Court of Winters, which is 15 Dryads with a Branch Nymph, and that rounds up my army for this one. Alright, now it's time for Lady Domina's the Legion of Hag Graf, which is a exiled Warhost battalion. So leading her army for her general, she has Malleus Darkblade as well as Spite. She also has Morathi as well. And for Morathi, she gave the additional command ability of Beastmaster, which basically allows beasts to both run as well as charge in their movement phases, so that's kind of dangerous. After that, we have the Hag Graf Guards, which is 30 Dread Spears with full command. The Crimson Guards, which are 10 Dark Shards with full command. And the third unit of the Pale Watch, which is another unit of 10 Dark Shards with full command. After that, we have the Shadowrunners, who are 5 Dark Riders with full command. The Scions of Hag Graf, which are 20 Cold One Riders with full command. The Reigns of Hag Graf, which is 2 Reaper Bolt Throwers. The Shakamore Seers, which are 5 Doomfire Warlocks, and then 2 monsters, Virazil the Broken, which is a War Hydra, and Rathric the Maul, which is a Charybdis. So that will round up my opponent's army for this one.
Assemble the army!
Alright, so here's deployment with my new table, which I'm really excited about. That's right, I replaced my table surface. It is not a game mat. What it is, it's actually made up of strips of basically flocking material. It's basically like a railroad mat material that's used for miniature railroading, and basically I just glued it with adhesive, spray adhesive onto 3 boards, a 2x4 of 1/4-inch thick MDF board, but we'll talk about that later on. But as you can see here, basically my Sylvaneth are assembled on the near side of the board. My opponent's Lady Domina's army is opposed on the far side of the board. So with that out of the way, let's go and talk about the individual deployment areas for this one. So over here on the left-hand side, we have Durthu just chilling out here with another Sylvaneth Wildwood right here next to his right-hand side. So he's kind of chilling out here holding up my left-hand deployment. And in my center, as you can see there, I have both Coadil, who is my Tree Man Ancient. He's stationed out this time so that way he can use his Tree Singing ability. Right next to him, I have my 3 Branch Wraiths, Crimson Moss, Siobhan of the Shadows, as well as Briarmaven. And then for front of them are my new, I'm basically proxying these models because I haven't got the new Kurnoth Hunters yet, but the big Reaper Treeforce Spirit guys in the front rank there, those guys represent my Kurnoth Hunters with great swords, and then the 6 Force Shambler from Mantic Games, those represent my 6 Kurnoth Hunters with great bows. So that's basically my army kind of deployed here in the center, kind of occupying the Sylvaneth Wildwood. Basically gives my wizards and casters a good little shield of dudes, so really excited to see how these guys do in battle. So yeah, that makes it my center deployment for this one. Alright, this is the deployment with the left-hand side for Lady Domino's Dark Elf Army. On the left-hand side, you got the 5 Doomfire Warlocks, which are the Shacklemore Seers. Next to them, you have the Shadowrunners with the 5 Dark Riders located there. On to the far right-hand side of the left-hand deployment, you have the Haggrave, Scions of Haggrave, which are the 20 Cold One Knights, and right there between the Scions of Haggrave, as well as the ruined building to the right, you have Malleus Darkblade himself, as well as Spite. So that makes it my opponent's a very cavalry-heavy left flank. In the center there, you have on the left-hand side, you have the Crimson Guard, which are 10 Dark Shards. Behind them, you have Morathi with her Beast Master kind of ability there. Right there in the center, those painted Dark Elves are basically the Haggrave Guard. Those are the 30 Dark Elf Dark Spears, Dread Spears? Yeah, Dark Elf Dread Spears. Let's see those guys at full command. On the right-hand side, you got the Pale Watch, which is another unit of 10 Repeater Crossbowmen, which are basically making up that side. And then right behind them, you have the Reigns of Haggrave, which are the 2 Reaper Bolt Throwers. And that makes it my opponent's very solid center deployment. And here's Lady Domino's right-hand flank. As you can see there, she basically has Virazil the Broken, which is her War Hydra, making the very far rank. And then right in the center there is Rathrek the Maul, which is that massively huge Charybdis. So I'm really worried about those guys. So yeah, that makes it my opponent's right flank. And with that, that ends deployment. And that deck is a turn number 1 for the Sylvaneth Army. So for my command phase, you can see in this picture, what I basically did is I summon up a brand new Sylvaneth Wildwood right there on the left-hand side of, right-hand side of the deployment. So I put the Sylvaneth Wildwood between the 2 houses there to kind of protect the left flank of my main body there in the center. And because we have those new abilities given to us by the General's Handbook, as well as the new Sylvaneth Wartone coming out, I basically use Coedo's ability to basically tree song as well, and singing some more Sylvaneth Wildwood right here on the right-hand side of my army, so that way they can get some coverage right there on the right-hand side of the flank. And so that is command phase for Coedil, and since I have a lot of casters in this unit, the command phase abilities just get a lot more better than that. I take my 3 branch rays, I spam that spell, the Rouse to War Up spell, and basically summon up a bunch of Dryads right here for those Sylvaneth Wildwoods I just summoned up. So on the left-hand side, I think I summoned up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 or 9 Dryads on the left-hand side. Yeah, 9 Dryads on the left-hand side, and I summoned up 2 units of 5 Dryads there on the right-hand side. So that's a nice little blocker speed bump I'm going to plan on using to slow down my enemy's advance. So that rounds up the command phase for my turn. And we directly go to the movement phase. And as you can see here, basically I just moved up my units as quickly as possible. Basically, I ran up my Troop of the Dawn, my Troop of Dusk, which is my new Kurnoth Hunters with great swords. They kind of just move up forward right where the house, on the side of the house is. Same thing with my Dryads are basically moving up forward to kind of keep them online with those, to create like a blocker position to kind of block the advance from my enemy's opponents as well. I also move my Troop of Dawn, which is my great bow wielding Kurnoth Hunters. I moved them to the right of that Sylvaneth Forest and put my Dryads right behind them as well, because I plan on shooting those guys next turn as well. Coedil uses his transport ability and transports himself right behind the main lines of my Dryads there in the forest to give support. And Durthu basically just kind of stays where he's at and just kind of chills out for the moment, because I need something to watch my left flank. So that is meant for this one. In the shooting phase, which is pretty amazing, I use my Kurnoth Hunter's Great Bow ability and managed to knock out 4 of those Cold One Knights, those Scions of Haggrave, which is pretty awesome as well. So those things are beasts. Those things have a +4 to hit, +4 to wound, -1 to rend as well. So, and then they do D3 damage with every impact. So those things are legit. They are the beasts, and I'm loving those things. So Kurnoth Hunters are really impressing me so far. So with shooting done, we go directly on to the charge phase. Just joking about the charge phase part, I forgot to talk about Coedil. He opens up with his Doom Digital Staff on the Crimson Guard there, which is located right there in front of Wrath. He managed to take out, I think 3, managed to take out 3 of those Dark Shards. So that happened first. So now shooting is over, now we go down to the charge phase. In the charge phase, unfortunately not all my Dryad units moved out. I basically wanted to send my newly summoned Dryads to charge both into those cold ones, as well as into those unit of infantry that's coming there on my right-hand flank. Unfortunately, my left-hand unit of 9 Dryads didn't make it, but my 2 units of 5 Dryads did. So I send my 5 of my Dryads into the Crimson Guard there on the left-hand side, and the other 5 goes into the Dark Dread Spears right there in the center. So that makes it charges for this round. This is the picture after the Battle Shock phase and also after combat phase. And basically, as you see there, my 5 Dryads just went to town onto those Crimson Guard guys. We managed to kill, I think, 7 of those guys. And when the Battle Shock phase basically came into play, basically those guys just kind of fled off the board. So that part was kind of sad for my opponent, but pretty awesome for me. On the other side, though, it didn't work out so well for my other 5 Dryads. My other 5 Dryads got destroyed by those Dread Spears, leaving only 1 Dryad left. But luckily for me, when it came to the Battle Shock phase, I basically rolled a 1, so because of that, I was able to stick it out. So now those guys are engaged in close combat, which is kind of cool. So that makes up turn number 1 for the Sylvaneth. Alright, so now we go into turn number 1 for the Dark Elves. This is the command phase photo. Basically, Malleus Darkblade uses his command ability, his Tyrant ability, which basically means that all Dark Elves in the 14 inches of them don't have to take Panic Battle Shock tests anymore, so that part was kind of cool as well. Wrathy also pops her Beastmaster ability on those 2 monsters on the far left-hand flank for her. Far right-hand flank for her, for my army, far right-hand flank, in order to kind of both run as well as charge the same turn as well. Wrathy also tries to cast Rinzapal's Black Horror as well as Arcane Bolt. Luckily for me, the Black Horror was dispelled by Coadil, but the Mystic Bolt went through and managed to put on 2 mortal wounds onto my Kurnoth Hunters. So, oh well, you know, as by be expected. So that makes up the command phase on this one. And in my opponent's move phase, as you can see in this picture, everything just came running forward as quickly as possible. You got the cavalry swooping in on my left-hand flank. You got the cold ones heading in towards my center. You got the infantry kind of bogged down by my Dryads, which part was kind of cool. Then you have Morathi as well as her monsters swooping in for the right-hand flank as well. So if I don't watch myself, I'm going to get outflanked and outmaneuvered here pretty quickly if I'm not careful. So that's what the board looks like after movement. Here's a close-up of the Shacklemore Seers as well as the Shadowrunners, basically moving to both my Dryad unit as well as moving towards Durthu as well. So those guys are charging from my left-hand flank, so I gotta watch those guys because those guys can cause a lot of damage if I'm not careful with them. And here's a close-up of Malleus Darkblade and his Scions of Haggrave, basically moving in to kill and get ready to charge directly into my big unit of Kurnoth Hunters, basically see what those guys are all about. So that's moving here in the center portion. And on the far right-hand side here, you can see both Morathi as well as the 2 monsters, Verilix the Broken as well as Rathrek the Maw. They basically run forward around that building and they basically set themselves up to a nice little flank charge towards Coadil if they decide to charge the next turn. So that makes it my mode's movement phase. And with move phase over, we go directly into the shooting phase. And everything within the Dark Elf army that can shoot does shoot. They go directly at my Kurnoth Hunters and manage to kill off one of my Kurnoth Hunters and managed to put off 2 more floating wounds on my other Kurnoth Hunter as well. So it was to be expected, but you know the nice thing about these guys is they have 5 wounds apiece as well as a +4 save. So that part is actually kind of cool as well. Plus, when they have the Tanglethorn Thicket, they can also, reroll any roll save rolls for them. So that part's kind of neat as well. Since I put those under those guys, that's going to be kind of neat to help out with the Felt Armor Sage, which is probably going to help me out a lot, especially when those Dark Elves start charging in at me. So we'll see what that happens. So with the shooting over, we go directly into the charge phase. And in the charge phase, you can see here in the center portion, everything just kind of charges in. My opponent's Shadowrunners, she sends those Dark Riders directly to my newly summoned Dryads on the left-hand side, and she also sends the Scions of Haggrave as well as Malleus Darkblade charging directly into my main line of my Kurnoth Hunters, which is kind of sad for me because, you know, Dark Elves get that +1 damage for them when they get to charge in with their Coleman Lances and stuff like that, which is kind of rough, but at the same time, I want to see how these Kurnoth Hunters do when it gets charged up by a huge hunking chunk of cavalry. So, yeah, pretty cool stuff. So that is charge phases on this side of the board. So with charges done, we go directly to the close combat phase. Unfortunately for my opponent, when he tried to roll for the charges for his monsters, he just basically wasn't enough dice rolling. It does kind of abandon him, so because of that, he failed the charges on his troops. This picture, however, is a picture of the center line after combat as well as the battle shock phase. You can see on the left-hand side with the Shadowrunners basically lose every single man except for 1 guy left over. That's after the Battle Shock phase, so the combat on that side was kind of brutal. As you can see here in the center, the combat was absolutely brutal for the Dark Elves. They only managed to kill off one of my Kurnoth Hunters, basically the one with the 2 wounds already on him, and managed to inflict another 3 wounds onto the other one as well. In exchange, however, we basically cut that unit of Coleman Riders almost in half. Basically, with those Kurnoth Greatswords, they get 4 attacks of those bad boys, and they have -1 rend, and they also have 2 up damage as well. They have +3 to hit, +3 to wounds. That's pretty awesome as well. The thing that really saved me, however, was the Tanglethorn Thicket ability, which basically allowed me to reroll Felt Armor saves, which really helped out a lot, and also Trample Underfoot. Stomp attacks! That's right, stomp attacks are back in Age of Sigmar. Basically, all my surviving guys after combat, they roll a D6, so that a 4+. They inflict a mortal wound upon my opponents. So 3 of my guys stomped as well, so that was pretty awesome as well. So not so great for my opponent, but pretty awesome for me. So that makes the combat on the center portion of the battlefield. In the center portion of the board, the combat between my 5 Dryads against that unit of 30 odd Dread Spears. I only managed to kill 20 of the Dread Spears in the process, but they managed just to chop down my Dryads like it's nobody's business. So it is kind of sad that I lost those Dryads, but those guys were newly summoned, so it didn't really bother me none. So, oh well, that makes a comment on this side of the board. And with combat out of the way, we go directly to Sylvaneth turn number 2. Alright, so this is the top of turn number 2 for the Sylvaneth. As you can see here, I won initiative, so basically I go next. So because of that, I basically sum up another Sylvaneth Wildwood for me to help out with. So you can see there on the center portion there of the board, Durthu sums up a newly formed Sylvaneth Wildwood right there in the center of the board. I kind of start deploying my troops to surround the massively huge unit of Kulwan Knights. And then Coadil basically sums up another Sylvaneth force on the right-hand side of the board as well, so that way I can get some support from that when I go up against my opponent's monsters on this part. So that makes a command phase on this part of the board. So here's a close-up of the Sylvaneth Wildwoods right here on the right-hand side of the board, just getting ready to kind of intercept those monsters that are coming our way. So that's going to be kind of helpful for the next few rounds. And here's a close-up of the Sylvaneth Wildwood that Durthu summons up right behind those lines of Dark Elf Kulwan Knights, which will basically start deploying guys over there here real soon. So with combat phase over with on this part, or sorry, not combat phase, but the command phase over on this part, we go directly to the magic phase for my branch wraiths. And my wizards basically bring the pain. I have all 3 of my branch wraiths as well as Coadil cast Arcane Bolt onto Morathi as well. We managed to put 10 wounds on that bat lady, and we managed to vaporize that poor girl right off the board. So that part was kind of cool. So yeah, Mystic Bolt is no joke, especially when 4 wizards are blasting that thing at you, which was pretty awesome in my opinion. So yeah, Morathi is now KIA. Alright, and with magic phase out of the way with the command phase, you go directly into the move phase. Like you can see here, basically I just start teleporting all my troops in and start moving things out in order to start putting some pressure on my opponent, as you can see in this part. So you can see there, my Court of Summers, my Court of Tides, my Court of Winters, they all deploy. Sternbark, my Treeman, kind of deploys right there in the back. I also move up my Kurnoth Hunters with the Great Bows. I move them up as well as with the 3 branch wraiths behind them. So as you see there, lots of movement happening on the side of the board. Here's a close-up of my Court of Wonders here on the left-hand side, getting ready to intercept those Shacklemore Seers as they come charging on my left-hand flank, so left hand is now secured. And in the center Sylvaneth Forest, I deploy both my Court of Summers as well as my Court of Tides. The Court of Tides look at the left-hand side, get ready to charge into the rear of those Kulwan Knights and get them fully developed into a double envelopment. And on the right-hand side, my Court of Court of Summers basically lines up to get ready to charge into that massive unit of Dread Spears as well. So that makes a movement on the center portion of the board. And over here on the right-hand side of the board, as you can kind of see, there's like another picture right there on the right hand side. You can see those Dread Spears kind of facing down my unit of Dryads. Also in the far right hand corner, you can see both Coadil as well as Sternbark getting ready to charge into the back of those Pale Watch crossbowmen, as well as those Reigns of Haggrafe, which are the 2 Reaper Bolt Throwers. As you can see on the right hand side, I have my Kurnoth Hunters with the Great Bows, as well as my 3 branch wraiths, kind of giving support to Durthu here on the right-hand side. Durthu uses his teleportation ability to move the Sylvaneth Wildwood here on the right-hand side to intercept those 2 monsters. So yeah, we're about to bring the pain here on the right-hand flank as well. So with moving out of the way, we go directly into the shooting phase. And those Kurnoth Hunters with those Great Bows surprise me again. It's just amazing the amount of shooting those guys can do and the amount of damage they can do as well. All 6 guys basically aim up right there at Rathrek the Maul, which is that Charybdis is located there, and they managed to put 6 wounds on that bad boy, so it's going to make it easier for Durthu to basically take that guy on when it comes to close combat as well. Up at the top there, Sternbark does a horrific job of his shooting. He basically managed to plink off 2 of those Pale Watch Repeater Crosswomen, and basically takes Coadil using his Doom Tendril Staff to basically knock off the other 3 off the face of the planet as well. So the entire back rake for those guys are now dead, and that unit is now cut in half. So that pretty much makes up the shooting phase on this part. And with shooting done, we go directly to the charge phase. And as you can see in this photo, basically there has been some charges. You can start from the left-hand side. You can kind of see my Court of Winters charging to the Shacklemore Sorrows there on the left-hand side. And the center portion, you see that my Court of Tides is basically routed into the back of those Kulwan Riders in the center. On the right-hand, kind of like the right-hand side of the center, you can see my Court of Summers charging directly into that massive unit of 30 Dread Spears. On the top and the back there, Sternbark charges into the Bolt Throwers in order to take those guys out as well. And this bottom right-hand portion of the right-hand side of the board, you can see Durthu charging into Rathrek the Maul, the Charybdis. And basically that's going to bring the pain on that part. Here's a close-up of the Court of Wonders charging to the Shacklemore Seers. And we're going to stop those magical Doomfire Warlocks. It's the last thing that we do. As you can see, here's a close-up of the center charges. Now those, what's his name, Mali's Darkblade, as well as his unit of Scions of Haggrave, that massive unit of Cohen Knights, they're now stuck in a pincer attack with 20 drives in their back, as well as 4 Kurnoth Hunters with great swords in their front. So that part's kind of cool there. Here's a close-up of my Court of Summers charging into those 30 Dread Spears. And this combat, I'm kind of worried about a little bit because my drives are going outnumbered 2-1 on that part. Plus, these guys got +1 to hit, plus bonuses to wound as well. So that part's going to be kind of rough for my drives, but we'll see what happens on that part. I'm just trying to delay these guys from attacking Sternbark in the back. So that's the real purpose of this movement. In the back here, you can see a perfect picture of Sternbark charging in directly to those Reins of Haggrave. He's going to bring the pain for some bolt throwers, so that part's going to be pretty cool. Unfortunately for me, though, Coedil also didn't make the charge, so he's still kind of stuck back in the force. So Sternbark's basically on his own on this part. And here's a picture of Durthu take on Rathric the Maul, who's basically wounded about halfway down, so that's pretty epic as well. So with charges out of the way, we go directly into the combat phase. Alright, for combat, the left-hand flank here, we basically killed 2 of the Shackle Seers. They managed to kill a handful of my Dryads, the Court of Winters as well. Battle Shock test made me lose a couple more Dryads as well, but as his guys kind of stuck it out, so that was kind of rough. Not his guys, I'm sorry, her guys stuck it out, so that part was kind of rough. So that makes combat here on the left-hand flank over with. Over here, the center, it was a bloodbath. Basically, my opponent, Malleus, takes his Malleus Darkblade guy and basically uses his Zarkan ability, I think is what it's basically called. He managed to kill a handful of Dryads in the process. He managed to take out a bunch of those guys because he basically kind of debated between using it against my Kurnoth Hunters and my Dryads, figured he'd kill a lot more Dryads instead, so he basically killed a handful of those guys, which was pretty sad for me. However, my Kurnoth Hunters, basically 2 of them, focused their attacks onto that poor guy, Malleus Darkblade, and basically curb stomped him in the ground, so that part was actually kind of awesome. So we took care of him, so now my opponent's general is now dead. The rest of the Cohen Knights basically focused their attacks onto the rest of my Kurnoth Hunters, managed to kill 2 of those guys off as well. I gotta tell you, those Tangleroot Thicket ability to reroll full armor save is a lifesaver in this combat, so that part can help me out as well. On the left-hand side here, you can see that one remaining Dark Rider, the member of the Shadowrunners, basically it was just killed off of my Dryad, so that part was kind of cool as well. So that makes a combat here in the center portion of the board. Combat here in the center part of the board near the top was kind of brutal. Sternbark managed to curb stop those 2 bolt throwers into the ground, so that part was kind of cool. He managed to kill those guys. His sweeping blows attack, as well as his impelling claws, managed to finish off the rest of those bolt throwers, so that part was kind of cool. Combat here in the center portion between my Court of Summers as well as the Dread Spears, the Haggref Guard, actually was kind of non-spectacular. We both kind of floated our rolls a lot on this part. I managed to kill a handful of his guards. He only managed to kill a couple of my Dryads. The process when it came to Battle Shock phase, basically we rolled pretty low on that part, so we didn't lose any of our guys. But I was expecting this combat to be a lot worse for me because those guys, those Haggref Guard Dread Spears, they have +1 bonuses to hit, +1 rerolling wounds, so I was really, really lucky on this part. I'm not going to lie, my opponent's dice basically abandoned on that combat, so that is the only reason why my guys are sticking it out this turn. So that's what happened with combat on this side of the board. And as if there was any doubt, Durthu over here basically destroys that Rathric the Maw. He just destroys that Charybdis like it's nobody's business. It wasn't so much impossible to expect. I mean, Durthu was basically taking on a Charybdis that was halfway dead, but man, Durthu just time and time again just proves how much of a baff he is when it comes to close combat. I just love this model. This model has always been cool looking. I thought it was the coolest looking thing in 8th edition. I purposely put him on my army because he looked like a BAMF on the battlefield, and now I'm just glad to see that his stats in Age of Sigmar basically matches the awesomeness that is Durthu. So, woo-ah, go Durthu. And with combat out of the way, we go directly into bottom of turn number 2 for the Dark Elves. Alright, so this is the top of turn number 2 for the Dark Elves. Basically, unfortunately for my opponent, he doesn't really have a command phase since both of his generals are dead. Not his generals. His general is dead as well as Marathi, so there's no more command abilities that he can basically use. And so what he has left over, basically, he just kind of moves out with movement. Unfortunately for him, there's not much movement going on because most of his guys are engaged in close combat or have been destroyed. In this picture here, you can see that the Pale Guard have basically turned 180 and aimed their crossbows directly at Tocodil, which is kind of sad, so kind of worried about that part. He might take some damage in that part. And as you can see in the bottom of the page, Rathric the Broken, sorry, Virazil the Broken, which is the War Hydra, basically moves into position and basically charge into Durthu. And that part's going to be kind of interesting because War Hydras are no joke, so I'm kind of interested to see exactly how combat will go between this War Hydra and Durthu. So that makes it the command as well as the movement phase for my opponent's turn. In the shooting phase, Lady Domina lines up her Pale Guard and basically opens up on Coadil and manages to inflict 3 wounds on that poor guy. She rolled spectacular on that part. And the only thing that basically saved me was cover saves because it covered with the Force. Otherwise, Coadil would have taken a lot more damage than he did. He was lucky to come off with only 3 wounds on that part because the amount of 5s and 6s that she rolled was amazing. And I have to admit, me just rolling a bunch of really high armor saves because my cover bonus was the only thing that saved Coadil in this portion. So that's shooting on this side of the board. And in the charge phase, fortunate for Lady Domina, her Pale Guard couldn't charge into Coadil, so they failed their charge roll, so they basically stick out where they're located at. But for Virazil, the broken charging was not a problem whatsoever, so that War Hydra is now mixing up with Durthu. So we'll see exactly what happens when that comes down to the combat phase. So with charged over, we go directly into the combat phase. This is combat here on the left-hand side after the Battle Shock phase. You can see there basically that unit has been cut down to half. We managed to kill the Shakamal Seers at the end. We managed to kill those guys off into the last man, but they managed to kill 2 or 3 of my Dryads in the process, and with Battle Shock tests, basically a couple of them fled off the board as well. So basically my Court of Winters is now basically at half strength in this part. So that was combat on this side of the board. Right here in the middle of the board between the Koan Knights managed to put another wound onto one of my Kurnoth Riders, as well as kill a few more of my Dryads in the process. But between my Kurnoth Hunters as well as my Dryads, those Koan Knights just had a chance to basically obliterate those guys and kill those guys. So those guys are now killed in action. And combat in the top center was extremely brutal. I managed to kill off 4 of those city guards. That part was kind of cool, but the city guard managed to decimate my Court of Summers. After the Battle Shock test, as well as the combat, I only have 5 of those Dryads left over at the end of that combat phase. So that part was ridiculous. I mean, those city guardsmen, those Dread Spears, the bonus they had, they just basically wiped the walls with me. So that part was pretty brutal right there. So that is combat for the center top of the board. And the combat between the Titans, between the War Hydra as well as Durthu, was also pretty epic as well. I forgot to take a picture of this, but the War Hydra managed to put 2 mortal wounds onto Durthu with his Fiery Breath ability, so that part was kind of rough. But then when combat basically came into effect, the War Hydra managed to put 2 more wounds on top of Durthu as well. However, when Durthu basically counterattacked, he got additional 2 more attacks from him being within 3 inches of the Wildwood, and basically he just sent that thing right back to hell. So, unfortunately for my opponent, Lady Domina lost her War Hydra, so that part was pretty bad. So, yeah, that pretty much makes up combat on this part, and that takes us to the top of turn number 3 with initiative. Alright, so turn number 3, initiative goes to Dark Elves. Lady Domina basically wins. She takes a look at the tabletop, realizes the only thing that she has left on this battlefield is her Dread Spears, and basically this is where she basically calls the game. She just takes one look around, realizes there's a lot more Sylvaneth left on the board, and was basically just kind of like, you know what, you won this one. So no shame in that, because this battle was pretty fierce. It was a lot of action, and it fought really, really quickly, and it was really, really brutal as well. So because of that, as you can see there, I have a lot more Sylvaneth left on the board, and I think a lot of it has to do with those Kurnoth Hunters. Those guys are a bunch of badasses in my opinion. So yeah, that pretty much rounds up the battle report. So off that, we go directly to the after action report.
Sure, I could have stayed in the past. Could have even been king. But in my own way, I am king. Hail to the king, baby.
Alright, now it's time for the after-action report. This is the part of the battle report where we talk about what went well, what went poorly, and what we can learn for the next time we do battle. So this is after-action report for battle report number 11 of the Age of Sigmar. It was I, Commander Cheapskate, with my Wild Hunt Sylvaneth Forest Spirit Wargrove Battalion versus Lady Domina's the Legion of Hay Griff, which is an exiled Warhost Battalion for that part as well. So in the end, it ended up being a victory for yours truly, which was Lord Tremendous as well. And let's talk about some of the things that basically led to that factor. First off, Kurnoth Hunters are the illest. I will never take Treekin ever again in my army now that these beasts are out there. These guys are awesome. Great bow wielding Kurnoth Hunters are basically the best as well. They're excellent long range killers with their bows doing D3 damage for every single hit that they make. They have a 30-inch range. You cannot beat that long range firepower. Judicators from the Stormcast Eternal army. This is what Judicators should have been in my opinion, because I've seen what those guys can do in combat, and when it comes to long range fire, there's nothing compared to the Kurnoth Hunters. So, yeah, that part was pretty epic as well. Great swords are also excellent for Kurnoth Hunters, especially with combat. They have +4 saves. They got 5 wounds apiece. They are really just bam when it comes to close combat. 2 damage, -1 rend. It is just unstoppable, that part. Plus these guys get Stomp, and Stomp is back for all things. So all hail the Stomp attack. That part was pretty cool as well. +4 to D6, inflicts 1 mortal wound for anybody's left over in the combat. Really, really good. Plus, when you combine with that ability from the reroll armor saves, you cannot beat Kurnoth Hunters when you need a force just kind of grinds on opponent as well. As for the other new Sylvaneth units into the army, I'm not really sure I can fit those guys yet. There's a lot of those tree spites. There's also those, what are they called? Tree warriors or realm warriors, I forgot what they're called. I mean, those tree revenants, I think that's right, tree revenants. Those guys are kind of cool because they can kind of tell we're in the battlefield like the treemen can. So I might have to look at those guys as well, but I'm not really sure I'm going to use those guys into my army as well. I might look at Dryka, maybe adding her in because she looks like she's got some cool abilities. Alariel on that giant war beetle looks kind of cool as well, so I'm not sure how to fit those guys in yet. We'll just have to see. Also, having a sneak peek of the General's Handbook, it looks really interesting, especially when you start looking at point values and allowing multiple battalions into a single army. That part's kind of neat as well. Battalions have their own point values. Lords, heroes have their own point values, units have their own point values, and basically you just break it down between different types of units and adding up the points together just like you do traditionally as well. It's also kind of neat because it allows a lot more customization as well. You could use multiple battalions in one army as well. You could add magical items. It looks like you can add what you call additional abilities as well. Like you saw in this battle report, we both had new abilities as well. So it's going to be kind of neat to see how the dynamic of this game will definitely change up. As well as using 2 battalions of my army. Once that Sylvaneth War Tome comes out, I might be adding 2 battalions to my army, just depending on how the rules work with the points, as well as using what kind of war scrolls are in that new book. So that'd be kind of neat as well. So I have to look at that part when that thing comes out as well. Another side note, I love the new gaming table surface that I'm working on as well. Gaming mats, one of my viewers basically says she used a gaming mat in my battle reports. I mean, nothing against gaming mats. Gaming mats look really cool. They got a lot of textures and a lot of images on it, which looks pretty awesome, but I'm not in love with the price. I mean, my name is Commander Cheapskate, for God's sake. I'm not going to spend more money than I have to for anything. In fact, I'm going to try to undercut as much money as I possibly can when it comes to anything that I use for my bat reps. So basically, I'll be having a cheap shot video coming out later on this week where it talks about how I went about making that for my wargaming table. So I'm loving the new gaming surface I have on my MDF boards for my battlefield. They're looking really awesome. Working really well, loving that part as well. Also, I'm also really excited for all the new developments in Age of Sigmar that are coming out for that. Like I said, once that General's Handbook comes out, as well as those new War Tomes, I think this game is going to be really, really different. I'm liking this idea of 3 different levels of play, which just sounds really cool as well. It gets new players to come inside, it gets narrative battles going on, it gets campaigns going. It also gets you have like that competitive edge when you have like point values and stuff. So it's just kind of neat to see what's going to be developing. So it's kind of cool in that part. So yeah. Once again, as always, feel free to comment, like, subscribe, put your comments inside the comment sections. If I got rules wrong, whatever, let us know because it's only going to make these battle reporters better. So with that, we'll see you guys on the flip side. Check you later.